Today on the Sartorial Chef, I'm taking you to the block party. First, it's my Oreo icebox cake, then cosmopolitan jello shots, and lastly, my baked macaroni and cheese with a crumble topping. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Sartorial Kitchen, guys, after a long little break. It is coming to a close on the season of summer. So the neighborhood has organized a little block party, a last little get-together while the weather is still nice and warm out. And like always, I am in charge of bringing together some nice delicious sides to tie everything together. So I'm starting with an icebox cake. Now I know I have made you guys some icebox cakes before. So I thought, I want to try something different. I always like to take an existing recipe and just do some different ingredients and really turn it into something else. So I thought, why not do an Oreo icebox cake? Oreo is Milk's favorite cookie, and the key to an icebox cake is a nice soft cookie that's going to meld with the mousse. So I've got a pint of heavy whipping cream here. And to that we're going to do a cup of sugar. I know that sounds like a lot, but you really need the sweetness to go against the bitterness of the heavy cream. And I've got a block of cream cheese here that I have just had sitting out. I like to let the cream cheese soften because it's going to be easier to process in our mixer here. Just bust this guy open here. I'm also going to kind of cut this into fours. So that's also going to help break this down here. Just throw it in little chunks here. Now to this we're going to add a little vanilla, about a teaspoon of vanilla. I like to use the good vanilla. And oftentimes I'll just measure with the cap because it's about a half teaspoon. Saves on dishes. And we're going to give this guy a nice little pulse. Alright, now to make this a cookies and cream we need Oreos, and I've got the Oreos right here. Very tempting, but I need them for the cake. And we're just going to layer them in. I'm going to go ahead and start on my mousse here. You want to just let this go for a few minutes so it gets nice and thick. Yeah, and you can see here, your mousse is ready when you can turn it upside down and it stays in the container. So that is nice and thick. That is just where we want it. Now what I'm going to do here, sorry about that, a little spatula here, we're going to get all of this out here. What I did is I took some of the cookies and I dusted them, ground them into dust. I'm going to fold that into my mousse batter here, and that's going to make us a cookies and cream mousse. Now what's interesting about this mousse, I'm using it for my icebox cake, but it also makes a great dip. Like a cookies and cream dip. You can get little like chocolate pretzels or something like that and just go to town. It's also a good cake topper. You do like a little sponge cake or something, you can throw this right on top and you're good to go. And what I'm going to do, I don't want to go too rough with this because we'll lose all that air that we've fluffed in here. But I just kind of want to fold over, come underneath, and bring that cookies and cream up top. And just kind of work it in slowly. And you can see it's already coming together nicely. It's going to be absolutely delicious. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my cake together and I'm going to let it chill in the fridge overnight and it'll be ready for the party tomorrow. Now before I serve this, I also got some chocolate chips. I'm going to make a nice little ganache to pour on top. Pretty good. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to cheat a little bit and just take a little of this. I've got my cookie here. Amazing, you guys. I'm going to take just a teensy bit of this. Not even like a fourth cup. And kind of spread that around the bottom as a base. Usually I start with the cookie, but these cookies are a little different. They're a little thinner. They don't cover as much square area. So to kind of help it out, I'm going to take just a very thin layer of this just like so, and I'm just going to kind of work it around, especially around the edges where the cake releases itself. That's where the cake is most fragile. So we're just going to kind of lightly go over this. That's going to help hold everything in place. Okay. Then we take our cookies and we layer. I'm just going to take our Oreos and plop them right in place. And what I like about these as opposed to like other cookies that I kind of bake first, these are uniform in size. With the other cookies, you need to kind of jam them in place and try to fill the gaps. But with these cookies, they line up nicely in a row. So everything's nice and neat. And then we're just going to continue this circular pattern on the inside. It's going to really hold them in place. So when I go to add my next layer here, everything stays in place for me. For the last layer, what's great about this cake is it's really quick to do. Literally, the amount of time it takes to make the mousse. And then you just throw everything together. The only thing about this cake is you kind of have to know ahead of time you're doing it, because it does really have to sit overnight. You can try quick options, like if you have a deep freeze, you throw it in for like a few hours. But it almost gets like too cold. It really works better. When you can really let it sit. Next layer of mousse, and I think I'm going to just barely have enough for this. It's going to be tight, you guys. We're covering this with ganache, so the top layer just needs to be lightly covered. You don't need like a whole lot of the mousse on top. You really need it like for the base. A little last bit of this. Alright. We are good to go. I'm just going to cover this bad boy up and put it in the fridge and we will move on. Okay. While I made my icebox cake, I have some water going here that I'm going to use to make some jello shots. This is I like to make different beverages and different drinks for parties and kind of share with the neighborhood and things like that, but it gets pricey. But jello shots are a good way to provide liquor for the neighborhood without spending a ton of money, because all you really need is one good bottle of liquor. Now, I like to be creative. A lot of people just get the cherry jello, strawberry jello, whatever, and just put one little liquor in it. And I thought, let's do something a little different here. And I thought, cosmopolitan jello shots. So, what I've got here is Jolly Ranchers now. I don't know if you're aware of this. Kind of has put together some different flavored jellos. And I found some green apple gelatin. That's going to replace our apple pucker here. I've got some cranberry vodka and a little lime simple syrup. And it's all going to go right in. Now our water's boiling here. That is 3 cups of water. And then we're just going to bring that off the heat. And we're going to do this one packet at a time. Just dump it right in, and you want to start stirring it right away. Otherwise it's going to stick to the bottom of your pan and make a mess. And you need all that gelatin to dissolve, or it's not going to come out right. Now this is like almost like a sour apple. It's really, you can smell it from, I can smell it from here, sorry. It's very bright, but it's going to be really good. It's going to be nice, refreshing. Everybody loves Jello. None for the kids, of course. This bottle is pretty full, so I'm going to kind of try and go over top here. So it's 3 cups of boiling water to 3 cups of cold water, but we're doing the liquor here. But I'm adding the lime simple syrup as well. So I'm really only going to do about 2 2/3 cup. And then we'll do 1/3 of the lime simple syrup here. Now the lime simple syrup, it's different than regular lime juice. It's got a little sweetness to it, but it's going to give a nice little acidic note, just to kind of give us a little something different. Now our mixture here is kind of turned a dark kind of red wine color, but that's okay, because that's going to leave people guessing. They're going to see that and they're going to assume it's cherry jello, or maybe like a black cherry or even a raspberry. But then they're going to eat it and they're going to get that nice pungent sour apple flavor and the cranberry and the lime, so it's going to be a nice little surprise. And I can lay these guys out. Now I use 3 packages. Each package is going to give you about 6 to 7 servings, depending on what size cup you use. And then I'm just going to take my cup here, and to keep from making too much of a mess, I'm going to use my cup here and get some of the mixture out here, and then I'm just going to lightly pour it in. And we're only going to fill these up about halfway. Just because the cup is bigger does not mean that we need to fill it up all the way. And what's great about this little sheet tray, it's going to hold it all in place so they're all very uniform. And I think I have enough for 4 more. So that's going to give us 24, which I think is a good number. So everybody can have a couple. Not everyone on the street is huge drinkers, so some of us make up for the others. I don't do alcohol all the time, but I'm more of like a social drinker. I hold my liquor pretty well. Sometimes it's fun to just let loose, have a few drinks, and wind down. So that is our jello shooter. We're going to put that up, and I will see you guys later. Mac and cheese time. Our water is boiling. I'm just going to throw my pasta in. And this looks like a lot of pasta, but I'm making a lot of mac and cheese here. I'm making 2 containers. I need a lot of macaroni, so I'm doing a whole box here. Just going to stir this around a little bit to keep it from sticking. We're going to move on to my filling. I have a really easy filling recipe, and the macaroni is going to cook in about the same time as this filling. I'm starting with a block of cream cheese. I let this kind of get to room temperature a little bit so it will break down easier. Actually, I like all my ingredients to be around the same temperature so they all cook the same. I've got a couple cans here of cheddar cheese soup. I know you're thinking, cheddar cheese soup, oh my gosh. Well, here's the thing about the cheddar cheese soup. It's already the consistency we're looking for. So I don't have to worry about making a roux and breaking that down. And the cheddar cheese soup is concentrated. So what you're going to do is you're just going to add equal parts liquid to what you're using in the cheddar cheese soup. And you're going to have just a very delicious, luscious sauce. And for that artificial kind of aluminum cheddar cheese taste, I've got an array of other delicious fresh ingredients that we're going to be adding here, so you'll never even notice. Now this is double the recipe that I usually make, but so I've got some heavy cream here. I'm just going to throw that in. So 2 containers full of the heavy cream. And that's about 1.5 pints. You can also use milk. I just think the heavy cream gives it a nice kind of lemon texture. Now for our seasonings, I've got a little hot sauce here. This is optional, but it adds just a nice little kick to it. I'm going to do several dashes here. Since I'm making more of the mac and cheese, I'm going to do a little more dashes than I would normally do. And then I've got some stone ground mustard here. I'm going to do about a teaspoon and a half of the mustard. And it's good to occasionally come over and stir your pasta, especially when you're making this big of a batch. It tends to want to stick to the bottom of the pan and stick to each other, and that's not a good time. So we just want to occasionally make it over here to stir things up. And then we've got some salt here. Got a couple teaspoons of salt. About a teaspoon of black pepper. And then for the garlic, we're going to do about a tablespoon of garlic powder. Tablespoon of onion powder. Be really flavorful, you guys. Got a little nutmeg here, classic for any cheese sauce. I'm going to do about a half teaspoon of the nutmeg. It's a little on the strong side, so we only need so much of that. And the rest of our cheeses. Now, I'm doing a baked mac and cheese. Now I know I showed you guys that before in season 1, so I'm doing something a little different here. I'm almost making like a crumble topping. I know what you're thinking. Crumble topping, you know, that's, you know, cobblers, that's dessert. Well, I'm doing something different here. With some savory seasonings. And it's going to be delicious. It's going to be a nice spin on the classic kind of cracker topping or breadcrumb topping. And then I'm just going to like give this a little rough stir here just to kind of get some of this cheese worked in. And then we're going to pop this guy right in the microwave for a few minutes while our pasta continues to cook. Right, our pasta is done. I'm just going to go ahead and drain that off. Now we want to drain the pasta water, but we don't want to rinse the pasta because you're going to lose your starch, and that's what's going to help your cheese sauce stick to your pasta. And this is going to go right back in here. Now to keep my pasta fresh while my cheese sauce goes, I've got some garlic butter here, and I'm just going to use the rest of this container. Now what's great about this, the butter is going to keep your pasta from going stale and sticking together. But the garlic butter, it's also going to flavor the macaroni. And I love adding layers of flavor to my food, guys. I'm all about layers of flavor. And I'm just going to stir this in. You could also add like a little oil, something like that. That's also going to work well. Okay, we're going to get our cheese sauce out. It's a little hot here, so I'm being careful with the bowl. And this is really coming together nicely, everybody. Amazing. I'm just going to continue to stir this in. Now this is going to bake in the oven, so it doesn't have to be like perfectly melted, but you do want all your ingredients to kind of be well incorporated. But it's going to continue to cook in the oven. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add my macaroni here into the cheese. I'm going to do about half first. This is a lot here, and it's a really full bowl. So I want to be really careful here mixing this so I don't make a mess. I'm going to do about half the macaroni here. And I'm just taking the whisk and kind of pushing the macaroni to the bottom of the bowl. And that's going to really get it nice and incorporated. Now we're going to go ahead here and add the rest of our macaroni here. Again, we're just going to kind of push down. Little 13 by 9 baking dishes here. My macaroni is going to go in that. Now I could use a larger pan, but it's going to take longer to bake. So I figured if I broke it down into littler pans, and it's easier to store in my fridge as well, because what I'm doing is I'm pre-making this. And I'm going to put my topping on it. And then I'll bake them tomorrow before the festivities. And they will be nice and good and hot. Large little ladle spoon here. And I'm just going to spoon this mac and cheese right into the pan. And when it's good and hot like this and it's steaming, you can just smell all those wonderful cheeses. I've got sharp cheddar in here, Colby Jack, a nice little Italian blend, some mozzarella Asiago. I'm going to fill this, not all the way to the top, but pretty close. I want to leave room for the topping. If you go too high, you risk it, kind of bubbling over. And we do want to avoid that because we want it to look nice and neat. I always like my food to look nice and neat, even when it's something gooey like mac and cheese. I like it to look uniform. I'm just going to spoon the rest of this in here. I don't know about you guys, but I am like ready to dig into this already. But I need to avoid the temptation and save this for tomorrow. Okay, so for the topping, I've got some white cheddar popcorn here. I'm also doing some steel cut oats. And this is kind of what's tying it into the whole crumble topping. And I'm going to do about a cup of the oats. And I've got a stick of butter here. You want the butter to be nice and cold. Nice cold butter. Otherwise it's gonna cook too quickly. And I'm just kind of cubing this. I'm gonna throw it right in. I'm using 2 sticks. This is gonna give us a really nice golden brown crust. And the popcorn and the oats are going to just give us a nice crispy texture. It's going to be very decadent. Now to add to the cheese here, I've got a little Parmesan. The powdery stuff is just fine. We're going to add about a ½ cup of the Parmesan. And then back to the garlic. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of the garlic powder, a teaspoon of the onion powder. Now the Parmesan is kind of salty as this. I'm only going to do about a teaspoon of salt. And about a teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to turn this baby on and give it a nice little pulse. Okay, I'm going to give this just a little taste here. Okay. That's actually pretty good. So I'm going to take this guy off. careful removing the blade so it's nice and sharp. Then we're just going to come in here with some clean hands and spread our topping out. I'm going to put about equal portions of topping on both. And just like a regular crumble topping, we're going to spread this guy out over top. I'm going to be quick with this because the mac and cheese is still hot and the butter is going to want to melt, and even when you're working it in your hands. So you got to be really quick here. And then we're going to cover this and throw it back in the fridge so it can get nice and chill. And it's going to set back up so when we go to put it in the oven, it's going to be nice. Get nice and golden brown for us. That cold butter is just going to melt slowly with everything else, and it's just going to create a nice texture. Alright, our mac and cheeses are ready to go. I'm just going to wrap these babies up, and we will get them in the fridge, and I will see you tomorrow. Welcome back, guys. It is the day of the festivities, and I'm going to start by getting my mac and cheese into the oven. I've got it preheated to 400 degrees, and this is just going to go in for about 25 to 30 minutes, just until everything is nice and golden brown on top and cooked through. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer here. So I'm making a chocolate ganache to go on top of my icebox cake, just to kind of take it to that next level. So I've got a stick of butter here, and I've got some milk chocolate chips. I'm going to show you a really easy way to make ganache in the microwave. So instead of getting a double boiler out and everything like that, it's just real simple. And I'm also going to add just a smidge of light corn syrup. That's going to give us that nice shiny texture. And the trick to this is, in the microwave, you temper it. So I'm going to do like little 30-second increments, and I'm going to stir it in. Right, the ganache is out of the microwave, and it is nice and velvety smooth. I'm just going to pour this right over top. Get a nice, thick, even layer all over here. And then I'm going to pop this in the freezer real quick. And it's going to give us a nice, hard chocolate shell topping for our icebox cake. It's going to be absolutely delicious, you guys. Doesn't that look just amazing? Into the freezer it goes. Alright everybody, as you can hear, the party is roaring. I wanted to step aside for a second to try some of this delicious food. I'll start with my mac and cheese. So good. Nice and gooey. And that crumb topping just takes it to a whole nother one. So good. Oh my gosh. Now, I've got some fried chicken here. This is from the market down the hill. They have the best chicken. So crispy and juicy and moist. It's incredible. We all chipped in for chicken, and then I took care of the sides. Well, a few of the sides also. Just so flavorful, so juicy, tender. Love a good piece of fried chicken. Now let's come in here and get some of this cake. This is my Oreo icebox cake. I want you guys to just look at it. You can see all the delicious layers here. I'm going to take a little piece here. And this is so good. the mousse gets into those cookies and they just get nice and soft and tender. It's rich, but it's good rich. Sometimes it's nice to splurge on a little chocolate indulgence. And then you've got that ganache topping. Just takes it to another level. So good, you guys. So once again, you've been dining with the Circular Chef. Block Party style. As always, please like and subscribe at the bottom and check out my previous seasons. Until next time.